Hello, everyone. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Welcome to our annual foray into the most iconic film of the holidays ever, film period, right? How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This evening, we've got a lineup that's blew my mind when I read it, and then I got to see what was going into it. It's going to blow your mind. There's like surprises all the way through. And of course, it wouldn't be How the Grinch Stole Christmas night without the host. I'm the reindeer to his Santa, Mr. Craig Kausen. Come on in.
I am here. Yeah, we're across the country again, and but it feels like we're hanging out together on this special "How the Grinch Stole Christmas" show. I do wish that I had plugged myself in, but yeah, I know that's a nice little touch. I'm gonna have to go to the 99-cent store like you did and find that little plug-in thing. Yeah, very nice.
Where I just it's the little details.
It is. I just put on my red. I mean, you put on the Grinch, which is great. You know, I got to be careful with green because I'm not really in Chuck's office. Which is kind of cool. But so anything green turns transparent. So I'll try not to bring green into the thing, which is tough when you're talking about How the Grinch Stole Christmas. But you think about it, we are let's see, 1966. If I do a little this at 50, we're almost 56 years to the day that the first showing of How the Grinch Stole Christmas came about, and December 18th, 1966, and pretty memorable. I know that there's, because we got, oh my gosh, 40, 50, it's growing, the numbers that are in here. So when we hit the number of years it's been, we all blow up. So that's what, yeah, I know it's going to be great. But 56 years ago, this film came to light on CBS. And I mean, I know Ben, but maybe there's some people out here that don't really know kind of the history, because people, oh, another cartoon. But there was a lot that went into this. There was and that's, I think, the whole theme of tonight is the making of, not just the people that made it, but sort of what led up to it. So I know you've read more books than I have on the history of Chuck and the history of animation. So, and I mean, I've told my side of the story that I make up every year. Maybe you can tell, your reflections on from how this thing came about, where Chuck was in his career, and love to hear you tell this story for once, or maybe
Well,
again.
I'd be delighted. And what I would like to
Please.
tell people this evening is you're in for a show. We've got some amazing things. We have guests that I'm just dying to introduce and bring on screen. We've got artwork to see. We've got stuff you've never seen before. So as each part goes through, believe me, you're going to want to hit the whole thing because we're revealing stuff all the way through. So to Craig's point, the Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas is, I watched it from when I was a kid all the way, obviously, till now. My kids and I watch it. And what I found interesting, and you see the final production of something, and you just see the swan on top of the water, right? You never see the feet paddling underneath. And wow, it's just so graceful as it goes on. You just see the finished product. But really what goes in, and what I love too, reading more about this and Chuck Redux and, his second autobiography and other clips and stuff they did, it was, you got to put the work in, and it doesn't just come easy. And holy cow, to get something made. So, the having two legends, meet to make this the iconic film. How does that all start? You go back to World War II, and they're working together in the animation unit, and Private Snafu and all that stuff going on. And so there's the birth of a relationship, right, in that atmosphere. And then from there, you get into, like, you would think Dr. Seuss, all right, all these books, they would make fabulous animated shorts and animated films and all these wonderful productions, but it's not as rosy as you might think. And he ended up being very displeased with the whole Hollywood scene and all of that. And, in the 50s, and you've got just losing creative control on things, being paid $50 from Leon Schlesinger. That's what he got for the rights to Horton Hatch's an Egg. $50. How do you do that? I don't know. So, and then there was another production that he worked on when he was working on a film and he got 500, but he was not getting credits, or he'd get like one tiny little name, like no recognition, none of this stuff. And he was like, you know what, forget it all. And, you know, you fast forward up until when, you know, Chuck comes out. He leaves after 30 years, leaves Warner Brothers, and all the success and the wonderful films that he created there. And dotting the line, Oscar, you know, working with the legendary Maurice Noble. And what a wonderful film that is. And he's getting into these productions and looking for projects that he wants to produce. And naturally, where do you go? I would go to Dr. Seuss, right? And to get up there, and really, you have nothing if you don't start with the guy who created the stuff. So it took turn after turn after convincing to kind of get it going. And finally he gets, you know, Dr. Seuss on board, and, you know, turning his book into a full-length film he was never for. And, you know, when you read it out, it was what, 10 or 12 minutes or something like that. It wasn't a long read. So how do you expand that to a 22-minute film? And all that Chuck did once he got the blessing to work with that, and then like, we don't have to do that these days, right? The network just buys the project. Well, what I found fascinating back in the day was, after you get this, you got to do the whole thing. You don't have any money yet. You have nothing, right? You're just trying to get the money to do the thing. So you got to do all the storyboards, which is how they did the film. So there wasn't like a script. It was all done in storyboard. And you get all the artists, to get everybody together. He got his crew, you know, from Warner Brothers, the unit back together. And I know we have Ben Washington's grandson on tonight, and we're going to be showing some of Ben Washington's production drawings, which is awesome. And so he's got his crew back together, you know, they're working on a thing, and you have to go pitch it, like, to sponsors, to companies. You just have to go find a company to give you the money to make this thing. And I forget what the initial cost of an animated.
So I wanted to just compliment you here that the and compliment in both ways, with an I and an E, so that we can compliment each other, but I can compliment you on a very nice rendition of the history of it. You know, and the one thing that I'm not sure that everybody knows is that after the dissatisfaction that he had, that he had to go down and talk to Dr. Seuss in La Jolla and just basically ask, you know, and we'd love to do this. And because of that dissatisfaction, he said no. And Chuck did a little more, like you said, a few drawings and whatnot. And he went back down and made the pitch, and Ted said, you know, I love you, Chuck, but no. And finally, after, you know, gathering the entire vision and being able to communicate that, and the promise that he would have creative control, that he would have endless quality of this whole thing, that Seuss finally said yes. And so, you know, and part of this was Chuck's vision on how expensive it was going to be. And you ask, in fact, I saw the preliminary just development budget today. I was searching through a few little things and saw that budget. And it was, so a normal half-an-hour television animated special was about $20,000 or $25,000 at the time, which is a lot of money for 1965 or 1966. You know, Charlie Brown came out, and that's the type of budget that they were using. And so the just development of it was just under $40,000. That's before any production was done. That's storyboards and design and that sort of thing, without any sort of animation. And the final budget of the film that he took to Roger Mayer at MGM, $366,000. So yeah, I mean, that's like, hey,
what is it, like,
you
15 times, 16 times
yes,
the cost of a yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, all of a sudden you have something, and you know, I think last year I was lucky enough to find an article that actually referenced the words that not only was it the most expensive piece of animation, at that time in 1966, it was the most expensive half-an-hour television special ever. Any half an hour of any television ever done, by far. So think about presenting that to Roger Mayer at the studio, saying, oh, by the way, we're going to make a film. It's like going to Disney today and say, oh, we're going to spend $2 billion on a film. What do you think? No. Why don't we just say no? And like you were saying, you got to go out and make the pitch. And Chuck doesn't go out and just, shake it to the trees. No, he and Maurice Noble. So Maurice Noble had a budget of $3,300. So think about that, just to do initial storyboards with Chuck so that they can make the pitch deck. These days you do it digitally. Back then, the pitch deck was hundreds of storyboards that showed exactly what the story was going to go through. And do you remember how many? Because they went to Kellogg's. I mean, Post. They went to, all the regular people that would pay for this, and they all said no, because there's no way they want to put up 16 times the amount of money. That is just crazy. Like, where's the payback on that?
Well, you know what I love is, first of all, Bill Heater, I know my green light is out. See the Grinch still trying to ruin Christmas. That's okay. What I love about it is 26 times. Like, can you imagine being said no to like 5 times, 10 times?
Just get frustrated.
You've got something that's already 16 times the normal price of something, and you just kind of keep. And what I love about what Chuck said, first of all, I love his perseverance, right? And he gets into it. And what I love what he says in his book was, he said, of all the places that would give us the money would be an organization that, we're all saying about how, like, not commercializing Christmas, right? And it's not about presents. So naturally a bank would fund that.
The association of all community banks. So it was, that was on the 26th presentation. Think of that, 26 presentations to get a yes. That says something right there.
That's yes. And to just keep at it. I thought it was hilarious when I read that, and to his point, and just the fact that he just laughed at the irony of it. So you go ahead.
I was just going to say that part of it that I didn't, because somebody asked me, just this last week when I was telling them about the show and about this $366,000 budget, and he goes, what on earth could cost $366,000 to make a cartoon? And so I was, it stopped me in my tracks. I'm just like, well, of course it was expensive, but now why? And it came down to the people that were involved. And so that is what I think is so important to realize, that this was not, just limited animation that was being done on television. This is the same crew that actually is sort of a superset of the original crew that was at Warner Brothers for all those years, making all those cartoons. And so, you look at you've got background artists like Phil DeGard, you've got Maurice Noble on the project, you've got Ben Washam, you've got Ken Harris, you got Lloyd Vaughn, you've got Phil Roman, who actually is still with us. He's turning 92 next week, and he was the young guy on the crew back then. You've got the Chuck, obviously. You've got all of these great people who are running a production company. They just won the Academy Award. These are top-notch people, and it's going to take a year to create this film. So to support an entire production company for nearly a year, that's how it gets in there. Plus, Dr. Seuss has to get paid. All the things, there's every part of this needs to get paid properly. So, it's the quality of it. And that's the promise of this whole thing, is top-notch quality. And you don't get that for $20,000 necessarily in the same way. So
what I found like amazing is he just won the Oscar. Okay, clearly the man, because he's 30 years at Warner Brothers, all the stuff. I mean, he got Oscars there and stuff too. He just won an Oscar with his own production company doing his own thing. All right, maybe 3 times you say no, but on the 4th, who, like, imagine the 25th guy that said no, right? Imagine the 25th guy, and he was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then the National Association of Community Banks come out, and every single 1 through 25, all the 1 through 25 no's are like, "Oh my gosh," and they're going for the antacid tablets. They're probably feeling ridiculous. They totally blew the shot at the most amazing thing ever. And look at the length that this thing is
Yes.
going. Look at the legacy of this, right?
It continues to grow. You know, I met with my mother and I met with Roger Mayer, you know, a few years before he passed away, and you know, he was the guy who he was the producer at MGM at the time, who said this can't happen, and yet years later he said that when you look at the numbers, it grew every year. It got more popular, it got more viewership, it got more demand, and sometimes they actually played it twice because of the demand, that they could actually play it over and over, and after decades it continues to grow. And so, as he said, that is the sign of a true classic, that it continues to grow. And they knew that within 3 to 4 years that this thing was going to be perennial, and it obviously has shown that it continues to be a classic. And it was the guys and the gals who were involved who did that. And so, you know, such as and I would love to, so part of this whole thing is how this film was made. Very similar, but in a broader scale than what Chuck and his team did back at Warner Brothers. It always starts with character, and it in Chuck's mind. So Dr. Seuss had created the characters, but then he had to expand not only the story, but he had to expand the characters and make them into something he thought would translate well on to television. So into the film. So I know we have a few images, and I can't see them right now, but I know you can, Ben, of like Chuck. I think, is there a model sheet in there? It's some drawings of Chuck's that show.
We've got 16, so we'll get into 16 Scott Ryder through 21, and we'll show some production layout sketches.
Okay, so this is actually later in the development, but I like these. I mean, this is Chuck actually telling the animators what the image on the television was going to look like. So I mean, Chuck drew a sleigh and bags. I mean,
how can you not love that sleigh?
I know. I look at the angles of it.
Yes.
But so I tell you what, let's come back to this for a second, because I just had a thought. I learned something this last weekend. We actually went to a panel on the Grinch in LA this last Saturday, and my mother and I were. I was lucky enough to be able to hang out with my mom all day long, which is awesome. A treat. Yes. She showed me something that I'd never seen before. And I think maybe we should bring her in, because this is sort of, she gets to share a little bit about like the real beginnings of the way that two geniuses get together. Hi, Mom. Are you muted?
She's muted.
You know, nobody mutes Mom.
I was told I had to mute myself.
Oh,
and so
which you did. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that.
Hi. Yes, it was fun being with you all day on Saturday.
Yeah, that was great.
We seldom have that much.
No, but you showed me something that I had never seen before, and that you have in your possession. So that little book that you showed me,
right? And
you have it.
Yeah, it happens to be the front of it, or part of the front of it is my background.
Oh, nice. You took a picture of it.
Yes, this is the book.
Yeah, and I like it that as soon as the book gets in there, you disappear. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a magic book is what it is. So yeah, you're good. You're good. I tell you, why don't, because I mean, everybody's seen How the Grinch Stole Christmas book, but why don't you open this one up and tell us give us a few examples of why this one is a little different than others.
Okay, well, I'm going to show you, first I'm going to show you when I found this, a few years ago. Because Chuck had left it for me, but I didn't pay much attention at the time, I guess. On the first page, there was this, which
You
is
talked about storyboards, Ben?
Uh,
this. This is a Maurice Noble storyboard, very early ideas.
what?
A couple of
Yeah,
them.
I know. I did the same thing. Like, what? It's
These
just
are
hanging
very,
out in the
very-
book.
This is the very first book that Chuck and Maurice made notes in. There are others that were later, but this was the very first one. And he just went through it and made some little notes. You can see some penciled stuff in here on this page, which is
Holy
happens
mackerel.
to be unnumbered page.
Well, you know when the Who's are coming in for sure. So
Yeah, and one of my favorite ones is near the. Let me see if I can find it real quick. When he's taken all the stuff and stuffed it up the chimney, which is one of the little notes he made in here, was that it was a chimney, not a chimney. But at the bottom of this page, let's see if I can, right here,
yeah,
you see that? That
sort
is,
of.
that is a little,
Yep.
a little sketch of a rolling ornament, which in the film was what woke Cindy Lou Who up. But there was no thing in the book about what woke her up. She just appeared. And so this was his first idea
Wow.
about a rolling ornament.
So he was directing the film in his mind
Just
in a
doing
book beforehand. Wow.
Little things that because as most of you who have read this book know, that it doesn't take 24 minutes to read. And so one must add things to it in order to make it into 24 minute. Is it 24 minutes? I think it's 24 minutes.
Yeah, it's either 23 or 24 minutes of animation. Yep.
Yeah. And so the wonderful little notes that he made in here, and then he clipped those little Maurice ideas. The very last page of the book, as you can see lots of his notes on that page.
That's crazy.
But there's another book. I think you know where that other book is that was later.
Yep.
That has more, because many of the things that are noted in here, they didn't use.
Yep.
But it was his first read through with the idea of making it into a half-hour special.
Wow.
Pretty
And
cool.
yeah. So that's where, and I kind of take it in sequence, and then I actually have something, because always talking about characters. So the story needs to come, and Dr. Seuss needs to get engaged. And there is another book with some notes from Ted and from Chuck, but I can't remember if we have a storyboard in there. If not, I'm going to grab one and put it over here, because I've got a separate camera sitting over here. Is there a storyboard in there, Ben? I mean, not a storyboard. I'm sorry, a model sheet.
No, I do not have a model sheet in.
Okay, I'll be right over here just a second. I'm going to show you one.
Scott, could you put Ben back on the screen with us?
But you look far better than I do.
I thought you looked far better than I do. I look pretty good for 85, though.
Go on. You look better than me at 43.
You're younger than all my kids.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Craig is showing
Yeah,
us.
I'm over here. So
Yeah, I wanted to comment briefly on something that Ben pointed out. Oh, that's great.
Look at that.
Look
So
at that.
this is I thought that it might be kind of fun to be able to show. You can take my chair off if you want, Scott, because I'm not going to go back there right now. Oh, I like that better. But you can kind of see this is an actual model sheet that was given and used by the animators. So this is a reproduction. There's actually, and the way that they're made is that a negative is made, a stat is made, and so.
I need that. When you showed that when we were going through stuff a little earlier for pre, I was like, oh my sweet mercy, that's phenomenal.
Yeah,
Look at how the
thinking.
lines. Oh,
I know they are pretty sweet.
Craig,
But yeah,
I want to just insert something just to
please.
complement what Ben was talking about and what you were talking about earlier about the amount of work that went into making this film. And one of Chuck's favorite sayings, one of his favorite principles or philosophies that he said often was that anything worthwhile, any project that's worthwhile is 90% work and 10% love, but only the love should show. And that's the way I think we all feel about this film, is that only the love shows. We don't look at it and think, oh my God, look at all the stuff that went into that. No, it's an enjoyable, wonderful experience. And I think only the love shows.
oh yes, I would totally agree with that. And I mean, I've read through lots of Chuck quotes, read through both his books. Like, the words of wisdom are plentiful and are to be digested and ruminated on. And I love that quote because nobody sees, and that's part of what I love about when we do the makings, that these shows with the films and the behind the scenes is, we see that finished product and how amazing it is and what it means to everybody, and look at how long the legacy of this film is. But man, they worked it, and they worked it hard, and all of that effort that goes in. And that's another thing that I love about Chuck and what he exemplified and with his team was all of the hard work that went in. There was no skimping on time or halfway doing something. He put it all in, his team put it all in. And I think, you had mentioned like the read-throughs on this, and I think this is a great segue into, I'll lose my mind, right? I'll keep it. But, talking about read-throughs, there's something when you're producing a project, and specifically a film, and you can hear, and I know because of what I've read from Chuck and what you guys have said, Chuck and Dr. Seuss, they knew there was one voice only, one. It wasn't like, well, maybe we should have a few people read through. No. We need one guy, okay? And by the way, he's a big deal. So you need one guy who's a big deal to do this one thing. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And so tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have the wonderful, the beautiful, the radiant Sara Karloff. And how I would like to introduce her tonight is what I read, Sara, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is your father, when he was on the set of, I believe it was The Son of Frankenstein. It was 51st birthday. And he was, what a wonderful birthday. You're just celebrating on Son of Frankenstein. And he said that the best birthday gift ever was you, because that was when you were born, and that he had rushed to the hospital from production, right, still in full makeup. Can you imagine Frankenstein showing up right at the hospital, and he's like, where's my kid, right? So
Hi, Sara.
welcome Sara to the show. It is so lovely to have you.
Thank you. I hate to disillusion you.
Go ahead.
However, there's a wonderful photograph that often appears in magazines of the nurse holding me in the hospital and my father dressed as a typical English gentleman gazing down at me. They wouldn't have let him off the set in that Frankenstein outfit. And who would in the world would have let him in the hospital doors? They would have locked him up.
It's still
Okay,
make-
I'm disillusioned.
He changed his clothes. He did not go in costume to
Okay.
the hospital, but it has made a wonderful story through the years.
Yes, it has. Well,
But
it
you
is-
heard the reality
I was
here.
the most expensive birthday present he probably ever got to.
well, I would say every penny was worth it, and it is such a joy to have you on tonight, and to talk about your father and his influence not only on this film but just in general, and talk about a legend of the horror like monster scene. And you go back from what and when I was reading a little bit more up on this, to go back when Frankenstein came out in, what was it, 1931, and that was his big breakthrough as far as being noticed film. Weren't there like 13 other films that year that he was in? So if somebody saw him in there, they could see him in like 13 other films, and this one was the one that hit. And from there, it was just a rocket ship and a legendary voice, and just a legendary presence. Go ahead.
Actually, Frankenstein was my father's 81st film.
81st?
81st, and as he said, nobody saw the first 80. And he had been in the business 20 years. He had been in repertory theater up in British Columbia for 10 years as a starving actor, sometimes getting paid and sometimes not. And then he had been in Hollywood 10 years. And he was just on the right corner at the right time, actually. The part had been offered to Bela Lugosi first, would have been offered to Chaney Sr. had he not died, unfortunately, at an earlier age. And then when it was offered to Bela, he decided that he would turn it down because it was a non-speaking part and because he would have to wear so much makeup. And he didn't want to do that sort of a role. And so my father was in the commissary when James Whale was, and my dad had just done Criminal Code, and which was a very good part for my dad. He had been in the play and the cast in the film. And so James Whale saw him and asked him over to his table and asked if he'd test for the role. And he was fortunate enough to be locked in the makeup room with Jack Pierce for 2 weeks, and Jack did this incredible makeup, and then they did a screen test, and the rest is cinema history.
Well,
Wow.
talk about cinema history too. That's one of the 4 films I believe he's in the National Registry, the National Film Registry in as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's iconic. They've tried, they can't match. There's nothing like the original.
Oh, I know. And he's also on 3 US postage stamps, and that set a record also.
Which I see the one behind you, a little sneak peek of that one, which is fantastic.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So, when we went through, and, Chuck and Dr. Seuss, they knew they wanted your father. There was nobody else. And what I found interesting in your father's history too, and just what he would do, is very diverse. Theater, film.
He'd do anything,
Right?
considering his 20 years in the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He and what I loved about that too was there something and you could tell us, was there something in, because I had read that he enjoyed like the children's book narration and those kind of things. Was there something in it that he found that was it a thing? Like what thing was it about that he just really enjoyed doing?
Well, he loved working with children and doing work for children. He had done 20, not by that point, of course, he had done 20 albums, recorded 20 children's albums for Caedmon. And he had a Reader's Digest radio program that had run for like 10 years, I think. He had been in Peter Pan on Broadway, playing Captain Hook as well as Mr. Darling, and he loved it when the kids came backstage to try on his hook. So he really, he was the antithesis of most of the roles he played. And he really enjoyed working with kids. He said that, and I've read this many places, that little Maria in the Frankenstein film wanted to ride with him in the car every time they went somewhere to shoot. Kids were not afraid of the monster. He said they got it. They understood that he was the victim and not the perpetrator. And I think his empathetic, sympathetic manner in which he played that role set the mark for that particular role. As far as the Grinch is concerned, my father was very, very modest. He never brought his work home. He never talked about his work. And one night my phone rang. And at this point I had two children that were two boys who were young, very young. And my phone rang and it was my father. And he said, Sarah Jane, I've just done something that I think is pretty good. Now, the fact that he would even call about anything he never done or had done. And he said, I thought maybe you and the boys might enjoy it if you wanted to sit down and watch it. It's going to be on the telly. The British coming out at him. It's going to be on the telly tonight at about 7 o'clock your time. He was in New York. And he said, I think it's pretty good. But you know, if you'd like to watch it, pretty good, yeah. He had never before and did not ever again call me to tell me when something he had done was on and maybe I would like to watch it. He was so pleased to have been asked to do that part. He so enjoyed doing that part, and he was so pleased with the way it turned out. He loved the Grinch role. He loved being part of that team and part of that property. He just was delighted. And for him to pick up the phone and call me and suggest that maybe the boys and I might like to sit down and watch it was extraordinary. And I told her the story last weekend. Craig and I were, and Linda were at the same, on the same panel last weekend. And I told the story of when the Grinch won a Grammy for when it came out. And my father was in England at the time the Grammy Awards came on. So my father asked his agent if he'd go to the awards ceremony for him. And the next time my father came over from England to the West Coast, he went to his agent's office and his agent said, "Here, Boris, here's your Grammy." My father took it and looked at it and said, "It looks like a bloody doorstop." And he took it and put it over at his agent's door and left it there. That's how important awards were to my father. But the Grinch and the whole involvement with the Grinch was tremendously important to him. And he loved every second of being involved. It was so important to him that he actually picked up the phone and told his daughter about it and his grandchildren about it.
Sarah, I had been told by Chuck that your father did the Grinch reading in one take. Did you hear that as well?
I heard it from you last week.
But
I hadn't heard that before, but my father was one, luckily a quick study, but what a difficult script that was.
Yeah.
And the changing of one part or one voice to another as quickly as that verbiage takes. And it's just amazing that anybody could do it in one take. But
It's true. And Chuck
it surprises me, but it makes me very proud at the same
well,
time.
Chuck was amazed and just overwhelmed with the idea that it could be done.
Well,
I mean, he knows
that dialogue is so tricky, and
Yeah.
the words are so clever, and yet almost tongue twisters. And the change of one character to the other, back and forth, done so quickly that it would seem next to impossible to do it that way. But as I say, my father was a quick study and was really a very dedicated professional.
Well, he certainly was. And as Ben and Craig both mentioned, I knew at the beginning, my father told me that he couldn't do it unless your father was the narrator. And there wasn't any other person anywhere. And of course, your father was one of the great actors of the world from the time that he started, I'm sure, but certainly from the time that he got recognized by everyone. But it was a great privilege and honor for Chuck to be able to work with your father. He appreciated it and loved the opportunity to do that.
Well, it was an honor for my father to be involved. He really, really enjoyed it, and
I'm so happy to
was
hear
very
that.
proud of being included in that project.
You and I are very lucky people.
We really are. We really, truly are.
I wanted to say that our audience, which keeps expanding as we go through, they love you, Sara, and they love you, Linda. They love you, Craig. I'm just here for to hold the table.
They love you
Well,
too.
we love you.
No doubt.
And I wanted to add, if anybody has a question, briefly, because I have another question for you, Sara. If anybody has a question, pop it in the chat, and then I'll ask it on your behalf with Sara. And then we're going to get into something that I have not heard. This will be a first, and we're going to get into the actual read of Boris reading this in his take, which I'm oogling. I will melt into the floor, and then somebody will have to get a mop and squeeze me back.
Just throw
Well, and for those of you,
all over you.
for those of you who are not, I don't know that there's anyone watching who doesn't know this, but the dialogue is done first, before any of the animation and before anything else is started. As far as the visual is concerned, the recording is done before all of that. So it is very much a early part of the production.
So I wanted to ask, I have a question for Linda and a question for Sara. Linda, Sara had mentioned like his father, her father, it was big if she's getting a phone call, right? And it never happened before, and it didn't happen after. So clearly this is a big deal. Was there a moment with Chuck, where you had mentioned like kind of like the home life and stuff, what it was like with Chuck growing up there, but was there a moment with this film specifically that you remember where Chuck just he made one of those statements, that was like, hey, this thing?
I don't remember his making a particular statement that I can remember. I too had two little boys and a little girl in 1966 that were very young, and I really wasn't thinking about much else. But I do know that all of the rest of Chuck's life, after having made that film, that he was as pleased with that film as with any other film he'd ever made. That it was none of his, he never believed that anything he had done was perfect or was as good as it should have been. Like Sara's father said, I think it's pretty good, and someone commented on the chat, pretty good, yeah, right. But I think Chuck felt that way about the Grinch too, that it was as good as anything he'd ever done, and that the team, all of the team, all of the visuals, the recordings, the behind the scenes people, everything came together and nothing really fell apart. There were no scenes that he wasn't happy with. There were no parts of it that he wished. He sometimes said some of his films should be cut up into banjo picks. I don't think he ever felt that. I don't think he ever felt about even one scene about the Grinch that way. I don't know that he was proud of it, because he didn't get proud of things, but he was happy with it. And he enjoyed that everyone else had so much joy from it.
Well,
That's well said.
It is well said. You know, we've got a question from Bill Heater, and it's Linda, when did you first see the film? Was it when it first aired, or was it sometime later?
No, it was when it first aired. We watched it as a family. Craig was there.
That was the same year that he received the Academy Award. That was my earliest memory, and it was in the same living room that we watched The Grinch. And so that was pretty. Or did we watch it? Wait, did we watch it down at their house?
No, no,
it was at our
not.
house. Yeah. Yes, our little tiny home, but it was great. Yeah.
And you had a question for Sarah, Ben?
I did. What my question was, you know, what people may not realize is, you know, at the time that and Dr. Seuss are wanting your father to take this part, your father's even very humble man, but he's a big deal. He's a very big deal, and, you know, very sought after. And, you know, I read, you know, even a piece a little bit later, you know, even in his later years, if he was in a film in the credits, and, you know, or not in the credits, but if he was in the film itself, he would be featured on the poster as well, more than what else was going on, even including, like, they'd highlight his name over the film name. Like, Boris Karloff is in the film, right? So, like, his legacy and that air of just bigness to his name carried through the whole time. Was there something in it where, you know, did he ever feel kind of overwhelmed by that, you know, especially after the Grinch, you know, launches and it becomes what it becomes? Was there anything that did any time it feel overwhelming, or was it just a thing, like he took it in stride?
He was very, very grateful, because he'd spent 20 years in the business before he had any success or could really count on his next meal. So he, with tongue in cheek, he referred to the monster as his best friend, because that role made such a pivotal difference in his life, both personally and professionally. And so thereafter, he took nothing for granted. He was totally appreciative of everything that came his way. He was humble, and he knew what it was like to be a starving actor. I think that's why he was so pleased to have the opportunity to be one of the founding members of the Screen Actors Guild. His card number was number 9. And he never spoke about it. He wasn't invited to the premiere of Frankenstein. And he just took things like that in stride, because he just felt grateful for the job. And he very, very often expressed his gratitude for being in interviews and across the board. He would express his gratitude for just being the luckiest man he knew for being able to spend his life doing something he truly loved and then be jolly well paid for it.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Chuck
was
felt
there-
exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, weren't they lucky?
Mhm.
Weren't they
Yeah.
lucky? Really?
And
I mean,
Chuck felt the same way, that he was just grateful. And he said that when he got that Oscar, that he got paid, not exorbitantly by any means, but he was comfortable, and that he got to do what he loved to do.
yeah,
And
my father didn't get well paid certainly by yesterday's standards or by today's standards.
right.
But
Yep.
by the standards of when they worked, he was paid. But that was a change from the first 20 years of his
Yeah.
career, you know? So, I mean, he truly remained grateful for being able to work at something he loved.
Well, you know, we've got some questions coming in. Arts by Niche. I'm going to save that one for just a little bit later because we have some stuff to show. You know, what I love, and you all just said what I was thinking was, and you know, I think our audience would, I will speak for all of us, is when you hear these stories and you meet the people in the family and how the legacy moves forward. It's always something that is near and dear to me to know that the people that I look up to, you know, that I've looked up to, whether I've met them in person or not, but that have influenced me, are such wonderfully gracious people and highly talented, amazing people, and yet, you know, just down to earth. And I think it just reinforces my my warm heart in all of this for what I have for that, because you can see it through, you know, Linda, Craig, the family, Sarah, you can see it through you, you know, and I think it's just a wonderful thing. And it reinforces that feeling of good that you have, you know, for people who have influenced you at the level that they have. So kudos to all of you. Yes,
I'd
dear.
like to say that the legacy and the length of the legs of my father's legacy is due to the fans. The fans are remarkable. And were it not for the fans, I'd be staying home cleaning my own oven. I mean, it's the fans are absolutely remarkable. And I've learned so much from the fans. And they know far more about my father's career than I could ever learn. And they have the nicest stories that they stand in line to share. And the first time I forget that I'm nothing but a conduit, I better stay home and clean my own oven because I'm nothing but a conduit.
Hear,
but
hear.
it is the fans that have perpetuated the length of time that my father is remembered as fondly and with broad-based legacy that he has.
Well, I'll say an amen to that and to the fans as well. But you know what, you exemplify it also. So what I've got a couple of questions, and one was, did Chuck and Boris ever have an opportunity to work again? That's from Rod. I'll leave that up to you guys.
No, as far as I know, they not. I mean, have you ever heard anything different, Sarah or
No,
Linda?
I haven't.
No.
No. I think they and I thought about it when you were doing the introduction, Ben, that Seuss and Chuck knew that it had to be Boris. But I mean, you think about that Robert Morley had just done the dot and a line, and Chuck knew that that was the exact right person for that. And it wasn't that, you know, Chuck used certain voices. He used June Foray, you know, he used others, you know, for voices during the history of his films. But when he knew that this had to be done this way, that Boris was going to be this, and then also with Thurl Ravenscroft singing, you know, he knew this was what needed to happen. It wasn't just, you know, here's 10 people, let's audition them all. It's a bit like Finding Nemo, that they wrote that part of for Ellen DeGeneres. They wrote that part for her voice, and so Chuck knew that the way that he read it in his mind, Boris had to do this or it wasn't going to happen. So
and that goes to answer Jennifer's question was, do you know if Seuss had any input? And yes, it was both Dr. Seuss and Chuck, both of them, they were locked in and they were in 100% agreement.
And from what I've heard from Chuck is that he heard it in his mind. He told Ted, this is who I'm envisioning. I'm going quality. You can't get bigger, you can't get higher quality than Boris Karloff. And that's, Seuss is like, you're right. Now I see what you're saying. And that it's not just somebody reading it. Chuck could have read the story, but no, you have to do it right. You have to get that right combination of every part of this. What other questions you got on there, Ben?
More questions, and then we're going to get into the read. One comes from Alan. It's, did Chuck and Boris ever retain any rights to any of the production? Or I think that
I
was
don't
all...
know. I don't know about voice actors at that point. If the Screen Actors Guild, if there's things that come from the owners of that, there are some things that happen with, but the licensing is all. I mean, it's MGM. Now Warner Brothers and the Seuss estate and all the rest of it. So, but it's certainly not. They don't own anything. Let's put it that way.
All right. Good. And then for Sarah, we have a question from Madison, and this was, what was one of your favorite memories with your father?
Oh, I always have a hard time answering that, so I don't.
Okay, fair enough.
That's a good
We'll
one. I'm gonna use that.
Right, we'll go with a lot. So,
Ben, I'd like to just introduce Chuck's answer to that. When people ask, it isn't exactly the same question. The question he often was asked was, what's your favorite character? And his answer was, you may have a favorite child, but you never tell anybody which one it is.
Correct.
I know it's me. It's always me.
Of course.
Good
Now,
answer.
Ben, do we want to do the book read now? Is that where you're going?
That's where I'm going.
Okay, so I to tee this up, this was one. It was an idea to replace the non-opportunity that we had to play the film at the Irvine Great Park exhibit and a presentation we were doing there, and so it was challenging to be able to get the film. So somebody asked, well, what about showing the book and, reading the book? And so, and I think the mayor read the book, and then Scott Ryder actually had the idea, what I could do? I could take the original pages from the book, because people forget what the book actually was, and then put side by side with how it evolved. Because last year when I did this presentation in New York, different type, but it was, how the book evolved into the film. And so as this goes on, it's Boris doing this one read. There was a recording that ended up in the film with an image from the book and another sequence, another image from the film. And when I first saw this, I asked, well, where's the rest of the book? And Scott said that was the entire book right there. And so keep in mind what happened from the original book, what they look like, what the characters look like, what the drawings look like, what the color of the Grinch was, to what happened when Chuck and his team and Boris Karloff brought it to a fruition at the end. And you can see how important Boris's voice and read was. So that's my tee up for it.
All right, let's do this. Mr. Ryder.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Yes.
I know. Did anybody else just feel like Boris Karloff just read me How the Grinch Stole Christmas right in front of me. That was I've seen that a few times, and that was the best. I think because I got to watch it with my mother, with Sara Karloff. I know, and you, Ben, and all the other people that are just their comments are just like flying up. Like it's exactly, yeah. That was so good. I love this. I'm not crying. You're crying.
You know, you
Sara,
go through.
thank you
to
for
read
I just, Sara, I mean, I watched you watch this, and I could tell that you enjoyed hearing your father's voice read that like that. That was just wonderful.
It was.
Oh,
It is. Every
oh,
time.
every time. Oh, so good.
Pretty good.
Oh, Ben, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No, you're fine. I don't even know. My thought process has left me. I'm still digesting this. You know, we had comments of people right off as it was going saying, you know, where is that? Could I have that recording? Could that be a thing? And there's something to, like, can you imagine yourself and, you know, Chuck there, and I think we have images of the recording session with the Grinch, and can you imagine yourself there and you're in the room and Boris just starts reading this from start to finish in one take?
Scott, put the studio ones when they had Dr. Seuss and Boris, and there's a beautiful picture of Boris and the Grinch in the book.
Number 12. We do number 12, and then in number 10. Like, well, actually, you go 10, 12. There you go.
I mean, them sitting there with the book. I mean, that's with Dr.
Linda,
Seuss.
Is that your book, Linda?
No.
No, that one
was
didn't have notes in it.
No, this one, this was several books later.
Okay. I mean, what a good night.
Well,
Oh, there
there's
are the
all the
presentation.
storyboards. Yeah. So all the ones that he and Maurice had created, and then he took that book out, and these were the executives that were in the studio. They got to be there that day to witness this because they'd put the $366,000 into the project, so they got to be there. But what a beautiful, and you're right, Ben. What we heard was him, after all of the pomp and circumstance of making this all happen, we just heard him into that microphone making the recording, and I think I appreciate more the way that he said the words to give the feelings of the book, because I've read that book literally hundreds of times myself, to my children, to people in the audience when we go places and whatnot. But there is something so delicious about the way that he did it that was so right. And boy, did they, he and Ted knew what it was going to be. And so good. That was just so good.
I'm, you know, I want to go through, I want to get the recording, and all I want to do is lip read. I'll just move my mouth, and then my kids can listen to the
They'll say, my dad reads it better than anybody.
So we've got, I love that. And kudos to Scott Ryder for putting that together and stitching that in.
So
that
brilliant.
was amazing. Ryder,
so brilliant.
You get
yeah.
So
10 minutes of just pure magic. And I mean, and Sara, thank you so much for spending time with us this evening. And I'm not asking you to leave, but I do want to, I brought some things out. I'm just going to share them as well. And I know, Ben, you and Scott Ryder have some things, and I want to talk a little bit about because what I saw when I first saw that and asked, where's the rest? It's all of the movement and the rest of the story that Chuck and his team brought to life, so that there was the movement. And we are going to eventually play a one small segment of Thurl Ravenscroft, who I want to talk about as well. But you know, Sara, the treat of having you tell a little insight about your father and his joy of participating in this. And somebody mentioned in the notes that when I first debuted this last year in New York, that I had said, and I sat with Chuck when we asked him to talk about the drawings and sign a few of them and whatnot, that he said, this is probably the greatest piece of animation that was ever made in my opinion, because of who all worked on it. And he'd look at the nuances of the drawings and talk about which animator did which drawing and the details of it all. So, it was a treat to hear that he enjoyed it so much, Sara. And so I appreciate that, that you're and sharing all the rest. So,
Yes.
Well, I appreciate being included this evening very much.
Total
Thank you.
treat. So,
treat for me.
well, we'll and we can probably have a few more questions later on in general. And if you're still here, Sara, that's great. And if not, totally understand.
I'll be here unless you kick me off.
Okay, well, yeah, Scout Rider, no one kicks her off. Ben,
No one.
but I do want you to go through some of the images that were put together about, whether they're Chuck's layout drawings, and we can kind of do a voiceover as we're watching, any of us, but the Mother, you too, of course, but animation drawings or, Maurice's things. I'd like to talk, because this all came together to fill out all of those extras for the 24 minutes of animation and the movement, even when the reading, the movement that happened. And so I'd love you to sort of take control here, and you and Scott can share some things, and we'll just do a little voiceover as we go.
Sure. So what I wanted to do too is, as we go through and take a look at some of the drawings, Scott will probably get into where we've seen this sled. Let's go ahead and start with 16. We'll move our way through 21 and then kind of work our way through the production. Is you got some stuff there too, Sir Craig, and we will bring in Ben Washam's grandson, who yeah, hey, we're bringing in all the family. So there's something about, specifically in this film, that there's so much that you take a 10, clearly an 8-minute, 10-minute read, right, and you make it into a 22-minute film. And I think, and it's, again, hard to pick favorites in this, but if you pick things that you start to gravitate to, you can go ahead to the 17. This sequence with Max, like, it's, and when I read that, as Chuck's looking for places and where to, add more to the film without adding to the book, right? How are you going to, move that where there is no dialogue, and you put that in. And this sequence with Max and going down the hill, that whole thing with the sled, and how, you feel bad for him. He's the sympathy boat right there as Max. And I love that scene. I love that whole scene. I mean, we're kind of nuts for animals. We've got 4 rescue dogs, 3 rescue guinea pigs, and we just picked up a rescue mini potbelly pig last week from the shelter. So, you get into the sympathy vote for animals, we got it. And I love that sequence, and it's probably something that, to read what Chuck put into it and how he used that to, bridge a gap in dialogue, but still further the story, is amazing. And wait a second, what do you have, Craig?
Well, you like that scene. I just figured, so this is an original production drawing from that sequence that you love so much. And this is the type of thing that I would show to Chuck, and he'd be like, look, and I'm going to confirm, yes, this is the Ken Harris sequence. He did pretty much the entire sequence down, but look at the detail of each of the strokes and whatnot. And, just the brilliance. And this is one single 24th of a second in that sequence. I'm loving, and then this one is a Tom Ray sequence of coming down with Max, flying in front. Yeah.
You know what production drawings? I am all about the production drawings.
Yes, I know. So, all right.
I'm just oogling because you know when you see how what I love about it is the look of the film, and I love that line work, and from the pencil line to the ink line, like
Yeah.
it was on, you know, and it translates so well. I love just all the movement. You already
All right,
know.
you go back to your layouts for a second, and I'll see if I can match you with a production drawing. We're gonna have a little contest here. You get a layout drawing, I'll see if I can find a production drawing for it, and we'll see who did it.
I would like layout drawing 20, please, Scott Ryder. CJ layout 20. Yeah, that one. All right, Mr.
Ooh,
Wizard.
that's good. Well,
one.
you know, you look at the detail. Hold on. Let's see
That's a lot. First
where.
of all, can you imagine animating that many teeth on a saw? I probably would have lost my mind. Right?
I know.
Like, no, there's 31 teeth. There doesn't, not 29, there's 31 teeth.
Yep. Let's see if because this is when he's annoyed. So I'm going to go back. We can.
All right. We're close.
I know. Oh, there you go.
Oh, the eyes. Come on.
Because you hold. I mean, look at that. I mean, you have to animate obviously the detail of it.
But look at the
And this
little
is-
tick marks in the fur and stuff. Ben
Hey,
Washington.
look who it is. Yep.
Okay, hold on. All right, now let's do something. Let's
All
play
right.
Foursquare. Let's play Foursquare. Okay.
Let's do it.
I need you to find Washam in the attendees. It's super easy. His last name's Washam, first name Ben. Let's
We're gonna go
in
Ben squared on a
Ben
square.
squared. Yeah,
Ben squared.
he's a better Ben than I am. I am the second to his first. Okay, so let's bring in Ben in Foursquare. All right, we're popping up because
I will just say that during the time that I was growing up, Ben's father, I believe, was Trevor, and Trevor was one of the few other children of the team, of the unit. There weren't many because I was born during the Depression, and there weren't many children born during the Depression. So Trevor was younger than I. And there's, I believe, Trevor's son, Ben. Is that right?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, that's correct. Trevor Washam, my dad, was Benny Washam's son.
Right.
That is cool. Nice to actually see you and talk to you, Ben.
Yeah,
that's
thanks for
so
having
cool.
so you know, obviously, great name, love Ben. That goes without saying. Now, was there something that you've showed and you've texted back and forth some really cool stuff, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit online on Instagram, and you've also showed some super cool things. So I know you've got some goodies.
I do. I'm gonna look through my folder here. My camera setup is not as cool as Craig's, but yeah. Let's see here. Well, yeah, I posted a drawing the other day. I was trying to do like a replication. It's a little glary. Sorry.
Ooh, but you got. Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Flopping over. Sorry. So
Fantastic.
this one.
What?
There you go.
What?
Come on.
That's
There,
the one I replicated.
Craig, he beat you. He found one closer.
I know. Holy mackerel. Oh,
I wish I had more. I only have a handful of them, but
nice.
Are those original production drawings?
yeah.
Oh,
Sorry
Come
for the
on.
second.
Come on.
oh, geez.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's
Oh.
there's the ringer right there. That's the ringer.
Woo-wee.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So yeah, I just looking at the ones like this. That's your grandfather's.
That's so crazy. I have like the DVD special, right? And I was watching it a few years ago because like growing up, I knew he worked on the project. I didn't know to what capacity though. I mean, he's credited as the assistant director. And what was his day-to-day? I had no idea. But it was Phil. He was doing like the added commentary. And he had pointed out some scenes on who did what. And the first one he had pointed out was the noise. I see that there on the bottom left.
Yep.
where he's like grinding his teeth, and and the drums are doing that thing, and it's like, yeah, he mentioned Benny Washam animated that, and my mind was blown, and it was like, because I could pinpoint specifically what he had done, and it's pretty wild.
Come on.
There, that one is Benny's.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the eye. Chuck would like.
Just the eyebrows alone.
Look at the eyebrows. I mean, that's 1/24th of a second.
I mean, from the camera, just from here, I can like almost see like the lead weight. Like.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
dense.
so good.
Technically, it's 1/12 of a.
Well, if they shoot it on twos, you're right. If they do. All right. Fair enough.
Well, some of your audience is going to get on your case for saying that. So.
Well,
So, Ben, I've got a question. As you obviously, your father was a legendary animator, worked with a legendary team. Were there things, that have been like passed down through the family, like certain, maybe a story here, a piece of memorabilia there that you were like, holy crap, and then maybe, it just stuck with you?
From the movie, not so much specifically, but I can share an off story.
Yeah.
sure.
So this was my dad, older. He was born in 1945. World War II era, right? As Craig mentioned before, with what's the guy's name? The FUBAR guy.
Yes.
Oh, Snafu.
Snafu. Yeah. They're doing all the training videos, right? So yeah, my granddad was never recruited for the war, so he stayed put doing the animation stuff. Anyways, when it came time for my dad to be born, from what my dad had told me, is that my granddad was actually then arrested for the picketing strike. So he was locked up in the jail, and my grandma, this was Grandma Eddie, she was about ready to give birth. Chuck Jones had to take her to the hospital so the dad could be born.
Oh no!
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Look at that. I mean, there's a direct connection. Good night. So as Craig keeps flipping through these, Ben, is there a treasured drawing that you have over and like that you just sit there? Because I know like you're extremely talented. Is there stuff that you look at that you just?
let me get another drawing. Be right back.
All right, he's gonna get another. Believe me.
Well,
this dude's.
I'm just in awe of some of these, like Dick Thompson. I mean,
Come on. What kills me is the tick marks in the fur, like off the mouth,
Yep.
the back there. And you better, that better be in the next frame.
I'm back. So I'm going to share two drawings. One for the sake of the holidays. So he gave out personal cards. I shared some with Ben Olson earlier.
Yes.
This is
awesome.
one he had done for my mom. Don't know when. Probably early 80s. This one's pretty special.
Scott, you can focus on that 100% if you want.
I'll read the lyrics. Yeah, again, sorry for the glare.
No, you're fine.
Oh, good.
Okay. Yeah, on one
Go ahead and read it.
Me and Pam, that's my mom. We'll run away singing Jingle Bells all the way.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
So
Wow.
I mean, just on top of the line work and the bugs, drawing itself, it's I just love the simplicity and the creativity that goes into it. Just bugs, jamming out on the piano. And then this one's probably my favorite. So my dad, Trevor Washam, he was not an artsy kind of guy whatsoever. He was more of a hands-on construction worker. He was actually a horseshoer, a farrier. That was his line of work. So flip this over. This was a birthday card. Yeah. Can't get the focus in there.
Oh, I like it. No, you could see it.
He's cracking a joke about Secretariat. Yeah, the fastest racehorse that won like the Triple Crown or whatever. So, and then I love the just the closure on it. For Trevor on his 33rd birthday from his pa who drawed this. DRAWED who drawed it. Past it.
Awesome.
Well,
thank you, man.
That is so good.
Linda, did you,
gosh.
obviously you knew Crew, you knew Trevor and his grandfather, or Trevor's father, Ben's grandfather. Was there something that pops out in your memories about Ben Washam?
Well, Ben and Ken Harris and Phil Monroe and several of their wives were in our lives a lot. They spent weekends with my parents. My parents lived at the Manhattan Beach for a while, and they spent a lot of time on the beach. They played poker together.
Yeah.
They went, one of the places we lived had a wonderful pool, and we had pool parties. Now, Trevor was 7, 8 years younger than I was, and so we were not friends.
Sure, age difference, I get it.
That's way too much. But Edleen and Ben were very much a part of my life, and Ben, both Eddie and Ben were more like uncles to me. They were a wonderful part of my life, and I adored them both. They were
Oh, Craig just put up another one. Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a general love of them. I have lots of little snippets of memories of them, but it's not like a story. It's just, I remember sitting here, seeing them do this and things like that. Ben Washam, I believe, did take the picture, which some of you have seen, the photograph of me and my father when I was on a horse, and my father was standing next to the railing with a Coke bottle in his hand, and it was a spoof advertisement for Coca-Cola, but wasn't real.
That's
Some
funny.
of you have seen that, and I believe
I might have that photo. It's probably really small, but I think I found it somewhere. But
that is
That's it.
another one. That's
that's
another
you when you're a
Oh.
little girl. Yeah,
That's
that's
Trevor.
Grandpa Ben, and that's my dad. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's just
that's
a little guy.
Trevor and Ben and me when
Oh,
I was about 12 or 13 then. Yeah.
jeez.
And
Look
then,
at
yeah,
that.
here's Elaine back in her youth.
Oh,
Oh, that's great. That's a wonderful picture. I loved
Oh,
her.
I can't get it to focus.
That's
Yeah.
a,
we can see it. That's beautiful.
oh, Ben, those
Yeesh.
are wonderful.
So yeah, I'm
Look
sure
what
it's
we got
all
on it.
illustrated for
It's
sure.
so cool.
So
Wait, did you ever have any? Did your grandfather or dad talk about the Bob's Big Boy character?
Oh yeah.
So that must have been like a family treasure story that he did the original drawings for that and worked there. Is that correct?
I'm a little fuzzy on the knowledge, but yeah, he had worked with Bob, like this Depression era.
Yeah.
They kind of started it up, and then I think Bob was just kind of ran with it. Benny got into animation,
He was a
stuck
cook.
with
He was a
drawing,
cook.
but then he
He
ended
was
up
a cook
drawing
in
the big boy on a napkin or something like that.
Yeah, he was the cook at the very first Bob's Big Boy and drew that. He was a great cook.
Yeah, that's
Ben,
what I hear.
your grandfather was a great cook, wonderful cook, and that he was just as good a cook as he was an animator. Just saying a lot because he was a great
That
animator.
does say a lot.
Well, I want to thank you, Ben, for popping on and showing us some of those special things. Like, it's a great connection to all of this. And thank you for being willing to pop on and
Yeah,
join
thanks
the
for
show.
having me.
Absolutely.
We'll chat more.
Absolutely.
Super
Yeah.
fun. Thank
Love
you,
your-
Ben.
Love your shares. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'll have to share some more together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We get into what, speaking of this, is like how do we even have all this stuff? Like how does Ben's got stuff, Craig, Linda, you've got stuff. How do things get saved, from this film when, back in the day it wasn't considered anything to save, right? I remember all the stories of, using I mean, you have cell washers, so they reuse it because celluloid costs so much, or just using them to sketch across the floor and see how fun that was to slide on cell switch, just now, when we get into like how we even have these things and the retention of work after Chuck leaves Warner Brothers and doing all these things, and then that UCLA storage incident, with the broken water mains and all that kind of jazz. There's not a lot of this out here. I'm like, that was amazing, some of the production drawings you have, and then what Craig's been showing. So like, Linda, what goes into obviously you pioneered this, and so what's in with the preservation of like all
Well,
these
let me just say that so many of the drawings, the animation drawings, were saved by the animators, so that as reference for other scenes or other films. The things for the Grinch were not as necessary because they didn't expect to make another Grinch, but as far as the drawings are concerned, the animators saved a lot of them for their own reference. The cells themselves were not saved. And of course, I mean, there are people who did save some and took some home, but most of them were destroyed by Warner Brothers, and not the UCLA fiasco, but other fiascos. but the cells were not considered to be useful for the animators in the future. So that's why. Like these that Ben has, that Martian has, and other animators' families have, are because they were good, wonderful references for other scenes and other situations. That's why Chuck saved so many of his things.
And well, thank goodness he did. So
yeah, I'm really happy about that. And as far as preservation now is concerned, the most important thing for most of these drawings is to keep them away, partly from people's fingers, because paper is not friendly with the oil on people's fingers, and to have them in acid-free environment. Most of the portfolio, I think all the art portfolios that you can buy are acid-free, so you can feel confident. Like Ben had his drawings in that portfolio, which is a great way to keep drawings.
So when you're looking at artwork, specifically from, oh wait a second, what do you have? Can we go four square with Craig on the layout? So we get into Maurice Noble.
So back up just a couple of clicks, and
My God.
so you're right there. That's so this is what it actually looked like when you get to, you can reach out and touch it almost, but I won't. So what's kind of cool about it is that, there is Maurice absolutely, envisioning what the scene is going to look like, the color schemes and everything. And here's Chuck saying, oh, here's the characters. So, here is the layout drawings of what the characters are going to look like. And Maurice was the best that I know of, who understood that it needed to be the characters that you loved and noticed first, and the backgrounds were a backdrop, so that it framed them so beautifully, so that you got the entire understanding of it. Chuck obviously had, they're Chuck Jones Who's. Those obviously, the style and everything, and something as simple as, here's the way we're going to frame it, and look at, understanding what the television with a rounding on the corners, Maurice had to understand exactly what it was going to be framed like in there. And so he did everything from an individual scene with Chuck's help to kind of like, this is the feeling that I want in a certain image, all star effects over mountains, behind everything else. I mean, he knew exactly how to create the effects that he wanted in this. And for Maurice, I mean, this is how he communicated to the background artists, to the animators, this is what it's going to look like. And so I got to spend quite a bit of time with Maurice over the years when he was alive. And what a dynamic, wonderful man, humble, obviously, about what he did, but he so enjoyed working with Chuck and enjoyed, creating these things. And he just understood how to make this. What'd you say?
His respect for the proscenium arch, which is something from the theater that focuses on the actors rather than on the background. And he always, that was one of the reasons that Chuck loved working with him, was because he could emphasize the action with what the background, how the background was laid out. That's a perfect example right there.
Right on cue.
Thanks. I do want to thank Scott Ryder, our producer. He's doing a great job. Always does.
Oh, yeah.
Always.
We can be a bit to keep up with. So Scott gets Scott, I'm going to send you something. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be. So, what I wanted to, as we look into this, I'm a collector. I collect animation art. I love it. I've got Chuck's stuff behind me. And, especially when we get into such an iconic film as The Grinch, and we, to have these things, why, and this question for you, Linda, you know that better than anybody else, and you've pioneered what this is. What is it, that connection that people have? Like, I know what the connection is that I have to it, which is why I love hanging it on my wall, because it brings me back to that reconnection of that moment when I first saw that moment. What is it about this that you think it just continues to, and there's not a lot out there. There's a limited supply of what there is. What is it that you found specifically to The Grinch that people just, it's a fascination and people have to have something of it?
Well, I think you just described it very well, and I think Chuck talked about it often too. When we started the idea of selling animation art, which was not original with us, but we certainly had a wonderful time expanding the market. It has been a joy. But what he said was that I say that that each one of these moments it is a memory. It brings back a time. It's kind of like a wedding picture. If you have a wedding picture of your beloved partner, and you still are in love with him or her, and you hang it on your wall, and every time you pass it, you think, oh, I'm so happy to have that picture, because it reminds me of that wonderful connection that we have. And I think for those of us who enjoy animated films, good animated films, that it gives you that little sense of connection and it makes you feel good. And
Yes.
I think we can use that these days.
I totally agree. We've got it all over our walls in the house, and I know when we had a studio up north and then the house, and now it's all condensed. So it's like we're finding room on the ceilings, which is fine because we can make that work. So what I wanted to tell everybody too is on the chuckjonescatalog.com site, it's top level. There's 4 different categories that we have with limiteds, production cells, one-of-ones, original drawings. Just some and there is the actual. I would like to swap.
Seen this.
I would like to swap spots with you, sir.
I know. So, I mean, again, Maurice Noble at his just best. And look at that. I mean, that
Look at that.
is, yeah,
You
all
know what I found amazing too is in his book, he had made comments because when they're painting cells and they're doing backgrounds, he was a stickler, and it's not like now where it's digital and how you can produce it, but the what they would paint would actually, the saturation would be a little bit different than what you would see on TV. So he would have to judge that on what's the right green for the Grinch and how does that look, and super specific to where if he he knew how it was going to come out. And I love Maurice, I love just his way of thinking, and to be that stickler, make sure you got exactly how it translates was, to me, was amazing. Come on.
I know. Think about that. So, there's Maurice's vision. Here's the background that actually is created. That from this drawing, they work together to get the background, and here's an original production cell from that sequence going into the snowbank. I just, ugh.
Well, I'd like to say something about Max. Max was not only our perspective. Max was us, but Max was such an optimist. He continually forgave the Grinch. That part going down the in the beginning when they were going down the snowbanks, and he ends up on the back part of the sled, and he's having such a great time. Like, oh boy, we're gonna go down this sled, and he was constantly regenerated as an optimist, and I know he was very, very grateful when the Grinch finally found his heart.
Well, I mean, every time, this is the third time I've done this with you guys now. I wish I could have flown out for the show last weekend. That had to have been stunning. There is such an amazing body of work around this, and it's art. Like it is an art form, and it is art, and everything from the art of the concept sketches to what was produced in the film, to the actual production drawings, to the cells, the art of the voice acting itself to bring those things to life. It's very much, if you got to get all the elements right. And tonight for me has been a extremely special treat because we've gotten to combine all of that together. And after this is done, I will then scream, right? I will not do it here, but I will scream and I will melt into the floor, and then I'll pick myself up later. What I wanted to say was, Craig, did you have, as we kind of put a Christmas bow on this, is there a moment, because I want to ask each of you, and we still have Sara with us, and I want to go through you, Linda, and Sara. Is there a moment in all of this that just, I can't help but smile through all of it, right? And I love the stories, and I love Linda's perspective on all of this. I love yours. I love Sarah's, having Ben come in and show like those pieces, and that's from his family. That's wonderful. So Craig, a moment from you, in all this that just every time it happens, you're just like, yeah.
Well, I mean, I had the best time listening to Boris read the story to me tonight. That's what I felt like. And that when the Grinch finally gets it and his eyes turn from red to blue, and I don't know if you do, I feel it every time, that all of a sudden there's that tingly moment of like, oh, that inspiration, that's what I felt like when I was being read to by Boris. I was just like, this is why we're here. I mean, I got so excited about that. So I would say for me, and to be able to do it while hanging out with Boris's daughter is just that was magic for me tonight. And every time it's been 56 years I've put up with this now. Wait, okay, yeah.
It's been a week.
But I, you know, the 56 years of this cartoon, and it only, and we do this show every year, which I love, and it's always different. This has been my biggest treat to be able to be here with you, Sarah, and
Oh,
to hear
please.
Boris. No, it was with Boris there reading directly to me. It was just so good. So that's my answer today.
Excellent. All right, so Linda.
Well, I have to say that I also my heart grew 3 sizes tonight too. During that reading, I haven't listened to I haven't seen the film for a while, and I wasn't really watching because I saw it the other day. I wasn't really watching the comparison of the pages with the film so much as listening to him read it. And I honestly felt as if I was curled up on somebody's lap with a favorite toy in my arms, listening to this fantastic reading. It was absolutely the pinnacle. And I have to say that I'm so happy that Ben Washam has all those wonderful drawings, and that he is preserving them and keeping them safe. And I haven't seen a picture of Eddie Washam for many years, maybe 80. And,
Let's not talk about numbers.
she was, I'm 85, Sarah, so
I'm 84, so
all right, you're just a kid. But Eddie was one of my very favorite people in the world, and so it was a great pleasure to see Ben and I always love you, Ben Olson, to your taking care of us on screen and during these panels is a joy. I love it. I love it.
Well, it is a distinct pleasure, and I love you also, dear. Sarah, what you know, I can't believe I'm talking to you, first of all. So thank you to Linda and Chris. Come on screen.
oh, please. I really do clean my own oven.
Me
That makes
too. Me too.
you know, I'm not going to speak for you, but
Please do.
I mean, is there, you know, that moment for you in this film, you know, is it the phone call from your dad, like that striking memory out or something? I don't know. You're my favorite thing of the night, and having Boris read to me that and this done, check mark. Thank you very much. So is there something for you in a moment with this film that's just special?
I'm so often asked that how do I feel about watching my father in a film, on television? How does it make me feel? And I have to honestly say I know he's acting, because I knew him as a person. Tonight, hearing that made me cry.
Oh,
Yeah, it did. I've always loved the Grinch. I always knew how special it must have been to him. It's always been so special to my family, to my kids and myself. You saw my ridiculous Grinch outfits last week. Don't tell anybody.
beautiful.
I even have Grinch slippers. I mean, and they flop about. I love the Grinch. I love everything Grinchy. I think I'm actually the Grinch. I love the Grinch, but that reading tonight, and when I actually hear his voice do the Grinch, because it is in so many ways his voice, it really made me cry. And I when and I'm asked so many times, how do you feel when you see your father on screen? How do you feel about it? And not as Frankenstein, for goodness sakes, but on television or this or that. And I have been able to, no, I haven't had to try. I think of it, I see my father acting. Tonight really touched me. And I cannot thank you enough, because the Grinch has always been so close to my heart, because it, in and of itself, it's so very special. And then because my father called me about it, makes it family, personally special. And then I just simply adore the Grinch. I can't thank you enough, Craig, for inviting me. Please invite me again.
I will. We're gonna try, because you live out near Palm Springs and
You're
Palm
just
Desert.
showing off that you have a good memory.
Well, you know, I'm half the youngster. I'm only 60 now, as of
Oh,
from
just
the
be
last time.
quiet. I hate
I know.
young people.
I
hate
just
children.
turned 60, so I'm proud of it now. I'm now 2 weeks into my 61st. But
Yeah,
since you live
61st.
out that way, we're doing a pop-up gallery.
Oh, you told me that. When's that going to be?
It starts in January through April, and we are going to get you over there, and maybe some of the people, Ben, maybe you need to come out for that, or who knows what. We just
You
need
didn't see me
to
when
get
I
together.
plugged my Grinch in.
Yes,
My
yes,
Grinch.
that's right.
Yeah,
She's
and
got
I'm
a
so
beautiful.
mad at whoever did that Grinch. They have thorough. They don't have my father doing his lines.
I know. Well, it's
I'm
a
going
rights
to
issue, I'm sure.
short-circuit it.
But we're going to do that sometime between January and March. We'll pick a day, we'll announce it, and hopefully
Don't
everybody
announce
will
it. Let
come
me
out
just
to visit.
fall in.
Yes, we're going to do it, and we'll get through this Christmas time, and then we'll celebrate out near you.
I
So
cannot
mark your
thank you
calendars.
enough
The next
for
time
making me
we will see
cry.
each other.
Gee,
Well,
thanks.
I
Some
did
of
the
the
same thing.
Some of the people on the chat are asking about to get more information about the pop-up. So how can they get more information?
Yeah, so to their consultants, so it's at the shops at El Paseo. It'll open, I believe, the 4th or 5th of January, and we'll be sending out all kinds of information. If you're not on the mailing list yet, which I assume you must be to get here, but if not, yeah, okay, we're going to put Sarah on the mailing list so she gets all of the information. Yes.
That would be cool.
Okay. We love doing that. And then more details. It was the 6th year we've been at the shops at El Paseo. We're going to be upstairs near some restaurant. Six, as in, yeah. Yeah, I 60th.
I thought you looked good for your age. No.
All right.
Okay. Thank
all right,
you
Ben,
so much.
Let's wrap it up.
It really touched my heart. It really touched my heart.
Yep.
We'll talk about Thurl next time.
Yes, we will.
Oh yeah.
We'll do it again. All right.
Well,
Ben, take us away.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
I learned a lot. I really learned a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, you know, I have to say that every year, regardless of whatever they remake, right? We won't, don't worry, we won't even go there. Whether it's, you know, my older kids who are college age or my younger kids who are elementary school, there's only one film that kicks off the Christmas season, right? And that's Chuck's How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
And I miss it every year.
Every year, we do it every year. And by the way, it's multiple times. It doesn't just happen once. And so in that vein of Merry Christmas and kicking this all off, I just want to say to everybody, for all of our attendees, thank you so much for joining us for this. I get a kick out of the fact that I get to just be a part of this. And thank you guys for joining. If there's anything that you've seen tonight, you know, you can just reach out to your consultant. They can help you out with this. I love being a part of animation history and having it hang on my walls as well. I want to say thank you to Linda, because I love you and you're the best. And I can't wait to see you again. You're You're one of those people that are a favorite of mine, and because you are you, and you are so generous with your time and your stories and just everything about you, and I just love it. Craig, I maybe your younger brother, you know, just there's a gap, but right, but it works.
It works. It works.
Yeah, it works. I've got more white than and hair than he does. So
That's not
thank
tough.
I want to say thank you to Craig. You know, I love hosting these things with you. The Grinch it's a staple of, you know, come now of our Christmas season and our third time going around. And I love doing this stuff. I nerd out, you know I do, and you let me be a part of this. And thank you so much for your generosity in that. And Sarah, wow. I'm gonna fly out to no, you just wait. I'm gonna fly out to Palm Springs just so I can meet you. You wear your Grinch socks, I'll wear my sweater. It might be a little
I
warm.
have a better sweater. Don't I,
You
Craig?
probably do.
Don't I have a neat sweater?
I just have an average. I will wear my average sweater, right? And I'll put on my dollar store blinking necklace, and you
What
can
month are
outshine.
you coming?
Whenever the show is, he's going to come out.
Whenever
Okay, I'll wear my Grinch sweater, my green one.
Yep.
you wear your green one, I'll wear my red one. We'll be festive. Okay.
Okay,
All right. Deal.
I'll wear my slippers if you're not careful.
No, I'm going to dare you on that, and I think you should wear your slippers. I will wear my socks, and I don't like to wear socks. I usually
I'll
only
wear my Grinch socks too.
You wear your Grinch socks. We're in. We're gonna figure this whole thing out. It's gonna be the Sarah and Ben show, right? But just
It'll
Let's
be
do
the
that.
Craig and Linda show.
it'll be the
Perfect.
Craig and Linda show starring Sarah.
There
in
you
her
go.
Grinch.
I love it. Let's do that.
Let's do
Thank you
this.
very much for including me.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Absolutely.
for being here.
I don't
Thank you
cry
guys.
often.
We want to say have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we look
Merry
forward
Grinchmas.
Merry Grinchmas. Ooh, yeah,
Yes.
that's a good poll. All right.
I'll let her sign it off. You go ahead, Sarah. Merry Grinchmas. You're
Merry
the last
Grinchmas,
word.
everyone. And happy, healthy New Year.
Thank you, dear. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Craig.